basically. We're gonna talk about what we did last summer. So we did a work with NGO that we're gonna explain a little bit more in Mato Grosso, and we working with gender, capacity building, and monitoring. So we want to talk about this providing advisory and practitioner service to strengthen family farmer value chain project. So I'm a PhD student in the natural resource and environment program, and Wendy is the research scientist something. But that's the first year, and I was So I'll start, and you can join. Okay. So, and also I forgot to mention we are joined by people from ICV through Zoom, so they also participate and they may say something along the way. So ICV is a regional NGO that works in Mato Grosso state in the south part of the Amazon. But Mato Grosso is a very complex socio-ecological system, and they have this green part which is the Amazon, but also a great part of Cerrado, the savanna. And this is the wetland Pantanal. So it's the Cerrado that is part of the year is wet. And this was a region that was colonized during the 70s, 80s. The people migrated from the south to this region in all the dictatorship times, and with the idea of colonizing the Amazon so the Brazilians didn't lose it, and very much a nationalist part of our history. So this still has 60% of conservative forest, but it's where this is the agricultural frontier and the deforestation frontier. So the deforestation is happening by the seconds there every time. So it's a very critical area, and the state is very known for cattle ranching and all the big commodities, agricultural commodities that Brazil produce in terms of soy, cotton, and corn. But at the same time, it's very diverse in terms of indigenous population, family farmers, and other communities that live, especially other types of African American Brazilian communities that live in this more southern part of the state too. So ICV has been there for more than 25 years, working. Their mission is to build shared solutions for sustainable use of natural resources there, and they have worked with all kinds of very diverse issues connected to agriculture, cattle ranching, with family farming, but also creation, protected areas. So they have a very diverse portfolio of projects. And yeah, I'll let you. So this history is the history of ICV is also, a few years ago we did some study and we realized the history of ICV is very connected to US.
Hi everybody. I think Renato's appeared, right? Or maybe he's invisible, not sure. But while we're getting the technology right, I just want to introduce myself. I'm Wendy-Lin, and I work with the School of Forest Resources and Conservation. And so I have a little history working in the Brazilian Amazon. I was really fortunate to go there in 2003 to work on a program there that was about sustainable rural development called Tropilunch, and I worked with Marianne Schmink back in the day of my dissertation, which doesn't feel such a long time ago. But and then after that, I graduated in 2009 here at UF, and then I worked with Bob in the Amazon Conservation Leadership Institute, that's ACLI initiative, right? And we did a number of different courses, and so that history is kind of part of this history with IC. So the first time we went down to Alta Floresta, where our compañero Renato Farias is working, he wasn't actually working with ICV, he was working with a different NGO, but Bob had relationships with one of the researchers in ICV, and they became a partner in one of the field courses that we developed as part of UVEC. So that was the first field course, and over the next few years we did a number of field courses, and they were all quite different. Some of them, the first course was like a 12-day course, intensive. Eleneja was there as one of the participants. So people go a long way back. And then the next course we had like 4 modules over 2 years. It was a specialization course, and then we met Carol, who was actually working at the time in ICV. in their family agriculture project. And we created a course specifically for the professional staff of ICV, as well as another organization called IOV, Instituto Ouro Verde, which also works in Alta Floresta in the same. They work with different communities and they have a slightly different philosophy in terms of the work that they do, but both of them work to strengthen family farming in the Amazon, in that specific region. And so we had a course with them to talk about the resilience of family agriculture and what the potential scenarios of the future might be for that region. And later, we were very lucky, at that course, we were very lucky to meet Camila. I don't know how many of you have ever met Camila Rodriguez, but she was here as a student, as a PhD student. So as you can see, I put this timeline up just to sort of demonstrate that there's been a lot of back and forth in this partnership with ICV, which started with Renato and which Carol is keeping going as somebody here. Did you want to say anything about the partnership?
Yeah, just that I worked at UCB for 6 years, and so this Camila came here first, and then I was taking this PICAN course, was about municipal environmental governance with Bob and Wendy, and we had to somehow apply our things that we were learning. So we developed a leadership course for leaders in the region, and at the same time I came here to visit to think about what I did and reflect and try to write something. So when I came and talked to professors and decided to apply to a PhD. So, and then I came here, and in the time they were also developing these other research programs that we're going to talk more.
Right. So one of the outcomes of these leadership courses, these professional visits of professional staff back and forth to UF, has been a development of a program, a research program in Brazil that actually links IOV, ICV, and a local university, UNEMAT, State University, with southern universities from southern Brazil. So that has emerged out of this partnership. And there was one more thing that I just wanted to say about that, but I don't know what it is, so it'll come to me.
Maybe also that many people came to visit during this time, so Renato stayed like different periods of time here, and many other people from ICV and also UV also came here to meet UF, and so it was also very valuable experience in terms of exchange of experience.
Sure. So this is a new project. We shouldn't really be presenting on this because maybe Renato should present on it. But anyway, this is a project that ICV is leading in the northern frontier of Mato Grosso, and it's a value chain project which focuses on 6 value chains. Actually, where are they? Okay, great.
There
I was like, what happened to the drawing? So. The focus of the project is to really strengthen rural development in this area. One of the big problems with rural development, well, there are many, but one of the problems for family farmers is that there's a rural exodus. So a lot of people moving from the rural areas into the peripheries of cities. And so keeping people on small farms in the Amazon is becoming more and more difficult, especially with the huge agro-industrial frontier of soybeans that is very prevalent in that area. And so ICV and IOV, the other institute we were talking about, really focused on family farms. And so in this project, they're really trying to strengthen value chains. And there are 6 value chains that they've selected. Milk, because of course cattle is just inevitable in that part of the world. And so milk is definitely a value chain that is very attractive to small farmers. Coffee, vegetables, cacao are kind of these more traditional, conventional products. And then they also have extractivist value chains, including Brazil nut and babaçu, which is a kind of palm, I think it is. And so the idea is to not only strengthen these family farmers in terms of the technical capacity to produce these products, but really, more importantly, to think about who are the sort of phases and important actors along the value chain. So when it leaves the farm, where does it go? And so this next picture shows you here they have the focus on the production system. And so there's a lot of technical capacity building projects within this macro project. But on the other end, they're really focused on beneficiamento, which is processing of food, because what happens is so much food is wasted as it goes from the farm to the market. And another thing, the market is a problem because When you go to the supermarket in Alta Floresta, almost all of the food comes from southern Brazil. So just picture this, you're in the Amazon where actually the community of family farmers are producing plenty of food to feed that community, but everything's going down to southern Brazil and then coming back up to the supermarkets. And that has to do with a lot of things, but one of them is distribution, because the getting food from place to place because of the roads and because of the distances is actually much more complicated than one would think. And so this project is really trying to tackle this issue of how to get food from one place to another without first going down to southern Brazil, and how to really link the consumer with the producers. So there is a focus, just if you go back, the second focus is really trying to educate or raise awareness among consumers in Alta Floresta that buying local food is something that they can be proud of, something that they can do, and something for which they can get great quality of food. And so part of doing that is to bring together a lot of different actors that are part of each of these value chains and trying to see where are the disconnects in the value chain. So this picture is just another version of that. I think here at the bottom you see that one of the big and kind of innovative parts of the project is that they are mapping out the distribution pathways for all of these products. And they actually have a great, does anybody here work on all that stuff, drones and geo-referencing? Because they have a great team there that is doing that. And so they're actually mapping where food is being transported and where the bottlenecks are and where they need additional transport. Because part of the idea is to use these 6 value chains, but think of them more in sort of a network. So maybe some of the issues that they face can be resolved across value chains. So maybe the leche, the people who are working in milk production can actually work with the people that are working in vegetable production in that level of transport. But to try to find those problems, a lot of the times development programs really just focus on how do you get the seed to grow and how do you then get that product into the market. But here they're really thinking about it all the way up to public policies as well. So how can you access public policies that can then help you to be able to strengthen these value chains? And so this project has been generously funded by the Amazon Fund, and it's a very short project. So it's 30 months, and so they have a lot of money to do a lot of things, and they have a great team. And this is their timeline, essentially starting with the selection of the different value chains that they're going to focus on based on their previous work. So they're not starting from scratch. They actually have been working in that area for a long time. And then really thinking about the community groups that they've long been working with, that they know are strong and that they know can take advantage of these new opportunities of this project. And then trying to map out the strengths and weaknesses and bottlenecks within each of these value chains, and thinking about participatory planning. So that the actors that are actually involved in planting, in harvesting, in distributing, in managing at a municipal level are all involved in this process. And so this is where their request for expertise from us came in based on our previous partnerships. They said, hey, there are some things that you're doing at UF that we think you could perhaps come and advise us on. And so what we did is basically come in and work with them to think about the design of the project and think about 3 or 4 specific things that we could offer them resources on based on what we have here at UF.
So our goals in the summer was because they came here in the middle of last semester in the spring, and they talked to us about some of the needs they had. And so, for example, I was taking a class about gender and empowerment, and they were wanting to, they have been for a long time talking about gender, so I said, hey, maybe we can figure a way of helping, and I applied for the TCD practitioner grant and I got it, so it was a way of helping me go there and do this work with gender with them. And also, I'm going to talk about have this related to my research as well, and develop a capacity building program that they wanted to do. And Wendy has like a lot of experience with it here, and I was working there with Isabel with them too. So to get back to the history that we had working and how we can build this new program, and thinking about participatory monitoring, which is a big challenge in any project. And so we apply our goals, which that's basically what those pictures are showing. We did plenty of activities, and we also participate in some of their own activities that were happening. We stayed basically a whole month there, and it was really very intense. A lot of work, but really fun. And so in terms, we had the goals in terms of the three goals, and we tried to divide our activities during this time, which was very challenging sometimes because I I was doing the gender part and Wendy was helping me. She was doing mainly the participatory and this part of the capacity building we were doing together. And we're gonna talk a little bit of how each one go and some of the outcomes of it. So, and also, which is very interesting, we plan a lot of stuff and we did it, but there's always any activities, unexpected results and activities that happen that are occurring and we end up participating that we're gonna mention a little bit too. So in terms of gender, the idea first, they have been for a time trying to deal with the gender internally in the institution, but also in project. But struggling, they came back and forth with this a lot of times and actually didn't develop much. And so when I went there, the first thing that I wanted to do is to do interviews and to try to understand what the different perspectives, because the feeling that I had, there was different views and understanding of what gender is and what gender means internally and externally in their projects. So ended up getting IRB. I did the interviews also as a way to use it as data for my research because I'm trying to put gender as part of my dissertation work. And it was very interesting. That it was really, basically the interviews inform all the workshops that we did later. And some of the things that appear was some also misconceptions about gender issue. For example, some people think that feminism is the opposite of machismo and sexism. So we know the feminism is a movement. It doesn't mean that we think that feminism means that women is better than men or should have more power. It's a matter of right in terms of equity and equality, right? So was interesting to see those things and then to address them. And also one very important key thing that the interview showed was that men felt they didn't have space to put their voices and to express themselves and maybe like, I'm not sure, I think this is wrong, I want to change, but I don't know how, and they felt they didn't. Because before that was mainly a group of 3-4 women that were leading all the gender discussions. And so they were really like, yeah, I don't even want to open my mouth because I'm afraid of what they will say about me. And so it was very interesting to see all those dynamics and then try to address them lately. So we did 2 workshops. One was very focused on the value chain and thinking about this specific project, and one was more broadly in the institution. So we started with the basic of discussing the difference between sex and gender, and this was very intense. We took a long time in trying to actually really unpack what it means, the really difference between what is your gender identity, what it means, how you express yourself, and what is your sex orientation. And trying to get to, when we look in our projects, we're talking about men and women and how a lot of times to empower women, but when we're talking about internally, we also talk about the diversity of genders and this idea of there's a spectrum of gender orientation and expressions that we need to respect. And then when we start talking about respecting the work environment, the interviews ended up showing some of the unexpected results that people started talking with me about harassment and not just sexual harassment, but harassment in the workspace. And I was like, oh my God, I don't want anything to do with it. This is too complex. I don't know what to, I stayed days trying to figure out what I would do about it. And there was a specific one conflict inside one of the administrative team of the organization. And I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. So then I talked to one, to the other, and then I talked to Renato as the director and tried to show him this issue. And just because I listened to them and they realized this was a problem, one day I was there, one of the person that was part of the conflict came to me and said, everything's done. We solved it, and they even they had like different offices inside the organization. they bridged the offices. One day there was construction happening. They were open doors and changing everything. I was like, wow, how this happened? So it was really, I was there to listen to this problem, and just because they had some kind of a space to express it, they also figure out a way of solving it.
Were your interviews just with people in sushi?
Yes, was that. So was one part me about the interviews I did together with the person who is the human resources in the institution, because she was very interesting. She said this to me many times. I'm interested of taking care of the people of the institution, like the health of the institution. She doesn't want it more just to be the administrative part of human resources. So, but she's very young and she's trying to figure out how to do this. So the interview was a way of her to listen to people and try to figure out how her role can be. And we had some kind of criteria in terms of gender parity and diversity in terms of older and younger people and different levels of the works in the institution, the roles in the institution.
And Carol, just to sort of back up on the gender aspect, one of the things that we were talking about before we went down to Brazil, based on Carol's dissertation research, is the curiosity that working in Africa, I mean, we've been talking about gender for many years and still having sort of the same kinds of conversations. And generalizing, you know, working in Africa, there, you know, every single project that you get from USAID or from international funding, you have to have indicators that are very gender oriented, and sometimes the indicators are actually given to you. It's not often that you can generate those indicators, but it is very, very much part of these projects. And so one of the things we were talking about is, well, how does that work in Brazil? And what are the NGOs doing to think about gender? And is it really something that they're being held accountable from funding agencies? And so we were talking about that within the context of the monitoring and indicator development for this project. But then it became very evident that part of the problem of generating indicators is that people don't really even know how to kind of internalize and apply gender within the institution in their everyday lives. Then these indicators that they get from USAID or from somewhere else don't really mean anything. And so the work that needed to happen was institutionally within the organization to kind of just explore the concepts before we are just ticking off a list of indicators.
Yeah, and the Amazon Fund actually gave them a couple of indicators, which was the number of women in the organization and the number of women in the organizations that they work with. And they realized this is definitely not measuring anything about gender, so that's where we came to talk about. And one of the parts about monitoring that we, in the workshops, we presented to them as a way, it's a very basic tool, but it's a way more of creating reflection in their work. And so it's the monitoring table is much bigger than this. There's a lot of other questions, but it's to think, for example, if you're gonna lead some kind of workshop with the association, the cooperative, are you addressing the barriers that prevent women to participate in the meeting? So they talk about, so maybe we should try to have a daycare for the children, or the women that usually cooks for the meeting, so we should hire someone else to cook so that women are not cooking and not participating in the thing. So it's basically you go through and you think yes, no, and if you say no, you need to try to, how can you address to solve it? And it was very interesting because you said you're talking about this for a long time, but for example, one of the technicians, he did his diagnosis of the milk value chain, which is very a man value chain. And so like, oh yeah, I didn't realize I need to talk to the wife too. And I'm like, yeah, so then how can we do this? And how can you understand when you go to talk to the women, maybe you're not the best person, so you have someone else with you, maybe another woman to talk to the women. So how can think about actually when you're doing a diagnosis to have the different perspectives inside the community. And this was adapted by Amy Sullivan, which is, she worked here.
Also a UF grad that came through TCD. I don't know if anybody knows Amy Sullivan. I think she graduated in 7 or 8. She was part of my cohort, but it was just amazing because I could email her immediately and be like, hey, that gender checklist that you made that was so practical for trainings, can you give that to us? See if we can adapt it for this specific situation. So that was really fantastic. And this is kind of a segue into the monitoring, you know. although Carol took the lead with the gender training and the gender questions and that part of the summer work, the gender was part of the monitoring challenge. And so part of what I did, you know, there's a lot that we could have a whole TCD Tropilunch on participatory monitoring, because it is there's a lot to say and a lot to learn about it. But what I just wanted to leave you with is just kind of my approach to working with the team, because ultimately the funding agency had given specific indicators that they wanted to see changes in, like the ones that Carol just mentioned. But then ICB has their own indicators. You know, they've been working in this region for a long time. They think that they know what are important things to be monitoring and tracking for change. And then maybe the community themselves had their own indicators too. So there were a lot of indicators that we tried to work through. And so thinking about how to design a participatory monitoring project, allowing everybody to feel like they could have a voice, but also not overwhelming it. Because not everybody wants to be a monitoring guru or even be collecting any data. So trying to get a sense of how much of this data collection can you put on the technical team, how much of it needs to be somebody from the outside that comes in and does an overarching monitoring, how much can be done in the communities, and then thinking about, so then if you have all this monitoring done, how are you going to get that data, put it in a database, analyze it? It was much more complicated than I thought it was going to be. So just part of the beginning was to think about the value of monitoring. You know, so what is the value of monitoring? Why do we do that? See change, yeah. See if we're making a difference. What else? Improve, yes. Keep track? Keep on track. Yes. So that we're not getting distracted. Yeah. Yes, that is a big one. Be accountable. I mean, seriously, you're getting a lot of money, and people need to know that you're going to be spending it and getting the results that you say you're going. So a lot of the time, monitoring happens because of accountability. And that's what people are used to in most NGOs. So basically, they take this list, and then they go to the field, and they just make sure that they have those things, and they can check that off. And not that that's a bad thing, because that's great, because they're actually sort of earning that money or showing that it's being used. But we wanted to think about monitoring more for improving, more for keeping on track or adapting where needed. So thinking about monitoring for learning. And so when we're thinking about it like that, it kind of becomes a different beast, because then you need to really own the indicators. You need to really get excited about traveling this journey with those indicators, and maybe realizing that there are indicators you never put in here, or unexpected outcomes that you can capture. So really getting the team to think about the reasons for monitoring, the ways to monitor, who should monitor, when, and how, in 3 days. No, I mean, we didn't do it in 3 days, but you know, in a short amount of time. So, and then thinking about their project, they had these, as I said before, these value chains, so 6 value chains. So each value chain should have its own indicators, because the indicators for milk are totally different for the indicators for babasu. Then at the level of the heji, at the level of the network, you know, when we're talking about transport or distribution or markets, there should probably be indicators there as well, you know, that are at that higher level. And then for the capacity building, they need to be their own indicators. So we were trying to like detangle all of these possible spaces for measurement. So that's what we tried to do together. And, you know, this is just an example of one of the little pieces that, and let me just tell you, working with Camila Rodriguez is amazing because she's a genius, but it's also just overwhelming because the amount of information that she can keep in her head at one time and manage on a data spreadsheet is incredible. So trying to like filter all of that and then have each of the technical agents who are just in charge of one of the value chains understand it all, get excited about it all, and not get freaked out was basically the work. So we had a lot of meetings. You can go on to the next page. And we had a lot of going back and forth. So for example, here, the primary production, you know, evaluation of the participant activities, the research, and the courses. So, you know, we had like 1,000 indicators. And then we thought, okay, so really? We're going to collect all this data and it's all going to make a difference. Then we went through each of the indicators and said, okay, so how feasible is this? How valuable is this? Who is going to do it? And so it's kind of a painful exercise, to be very honest. It was very painful, and I'm sure that the team from ICB will agree. But it was a great learning experience because afterwards, people had a much clearer idea of what's important and why. So I will leave you with that. And what we tried to do is give them kind of a pyramid of how the information was going to work. And luckily, well, not luckily, intentionally, the technical team has a meeting, evaluation meeting, kind of planning evaluation meeting every 3 months. And so we thought, great. This could be, because you know, you don't want to end up evaluating a project at the end of the project because then you can't learn at all. So you want to be learning as you go. So we thought the evaluation meeting is a perfect moment for people to be sort of giving in some of those indicators, talking about the progress in each of the value chains and the network. And so we created these little like reports that people could fill out and then use as a learning tool during the meeting.
Cool. So
That was the next thing we created.
this is the other piece that we created, and we spend a lot of time with only the drawings. So the last part is the innovation platform. That's how they wanted to call innovation, is a big buzzword in the Angel world. So it's basically a bunch of capacity building and a different ways of looking at capacity building, not just as technical activities, but also more broadly. So the base of our little flower is the technical capacity. So it's the work of almost the daily work of the technicians in terms of production and the level of the farm, and also in the level of the enterprise. So in terms of the community, the associations and the cooperatives, and also some kind of work with public policies and public participation. So working with the local government and working with participatory councils that we have in the municipalities to make sure that those spaces are also occupied by the family farmers, and public policies that is important for them is addressed there. So this is the base. But also we want to think about the value chain as a whole. So we wanted to develop this big, which I think this part, the little, the titles of the flower, is kind of the big part of this program, which is this capacity building that brings the different stakeholders of the value chains together to look at the whole governance of the value chain and the different roles and how can look at the problems that they have and how can they solve the problems. So the idea is also to lump together a few of the value chains that are a little similar, like the coffee and milk together because they have similar issues. So they're figuring out how to do this. And also think about how we can bring together the different value chains together. So they have some meetings with the partners of the project. I think it's 3-4 meetings per year. So also to bring in to see the different problems, in the common problems and the common solutions for the different value chains. And there's the broader blue one is also how can we mobilize not just the partners, the direct partners, but the society. So how can we talk with the supermarket in the city and understand why don't they buy products, what's the problem of buying the products from the municipality, and try to address those barriers and have like big campaigns in the municipalities like buy local, this is important because X, Y, Z, because they did this. And but also the core of all this is actually ICB who is implementing it. And so the yellow part of the flower is how can we also strengthen ICB to work with this community. And so we developed this idea of core learning spaces with the communities and inside ICB, because the different technicians work with different value chains, but how can they learn with each other with the problems and create spaces of communication? And for example, when they go to the field, don't go just one and one go to the one municipality and then the next week the other goes to the same municipality to work with the other value chains. So how can they go together, use this space to learn, and also how can they be the facilitators with the community so that people from different value chains inside the community is also learning between themselves, and because a lot of the problems are actually common and they can work together to address it. So this is kind of our innovation approach for this platform. So it's this core of learning and monitoring.
Yeah, so just before you go on, I know it's kind of sounds like really conceptual. This is part of like a 50-page report. We just thought we would show you this. But the idea is to design the program. And just to give some ideas, we're not like telling them what to do. This is just some suggestions. And then ICV will take that and they'll be like, this looks, I mean, it's not because of course we did it together, but they'll be able to see, okay, so what is feasible, what's doable, where can we find other partners? And so it's really like the skeleton infrastructure that we were creating, not like, and then on day 3, you should do this course and then you should do that. We gave some ideas based on our previous experience, but it was kind of a broader macro structure. And we see from this that one of the things that from this capacity building and also from the monitoring is that it's impossible for ICV to do all of this stuff, because I mean they're already just trying to do the value chain. So then to do all of this, it's like they need like an army of people to help them, which could be you, because they actually need a lot of help. And so both in terms of monitoring and helping developing the indicators, but also in terms of thinking about the capacity building. One of the things that they just did was they partnered with the local federal university,
The Institute,
Federal Institute, Technical Institute. And they have a course coming up, starts in December, January, February, March, and it has a lot of the content that we had talked about together. And so we can see that already things are happening on the ground. They're bringing in some of the pedagogy from ACLI, which of course also comes from the Natural Resources Leadership Institute, using experiential learning. And so they've kind of got all of that infrastructure that they're then applying in these ways that are relevant for them. And so this is kind of the result of the summer for us, but also for the project, you know, getting designed. Thinking about these little tiny bubbles there as value chains and communities that are then connected through this network. And at the level of the value chain, there are local strategies that have to happen in the production system and in the organization and political system. And then at the level of the network, there are some common challenges and potentially common solutions that they're trying to seek. And then ideally, there is research, monitoring, and evaluation that happens across this. And so we felt like there was a direct input of learning, you know, an exchange that happened in the summer that could then help them to advance. And I'm sure that they're not going to stick to the letter of the law of what's in the report, but it gives them some food for thought.
And I think the great value of the work was not, of course, there's the whole report and they're going to use it for the work, but during this process of trying to make all this fit together, they were doing all the work with the monitoring and think about gender and think about this great platform. It was important for them also to see this project as everything connected. So in a lot of the meetings when we were presenting to the technicians, they were like, oh, okay, all right. Now I see how my work and the capacity building that I do in the community, my value chain is connected to this whole change that they're trying to make, which won't happen only in 2 years of the project. So this can also inform us some way of continuing getting more funds and other, and maybe even from the Amazon fund to show they have this broader vision of how they want to do it and how all those pieces fit together.
Yeah, so actually the product of the report and these beautiful little drawings are not really the real goal. You know, the goal was the meetings and the interactions and the awareness that people had while they were going through this. And so, you know, this is just kind of the result, but really the process of talking together was where the magic happened. And so we just wanted to focus on, for us, what the value of being with ICV and sustaining these partnerships is, you know. So firstly, of course, for Carol, you know, she's been working there for 6 years. Now she's doing a graduate degree, and sometimes you can get kind of disconnected from the place where you came from. And so this is a great opportunity for her to just stay connected, really stay part of a project that they're doing, which kind of builds on the projects that you were part of before, right? Mm-hmm. Did you want to say anything more about that? And you know, we have long-term relationships, so it's also about maintaining those friendships and keeping in touch, keeping our understanding of what the frontiers are in that region, frontiers of problems and solutions. We were able to respond with specific expertise, so there's this kind of open door, like a portal, like we can go in and out and in and out and help with capacity building and with expertise, but also we are very lucky to receive here at UF. You know, I don't know how many of you went to the Amazon workshop last year, but ICV and IOV were kind of huge partners in helping us think through how to design some of those activities, and they continue to come back to UF. And I remember we went to Montpellier to the Resilience Alliance conference, and there are so many amazing scientists from all over the world, from Stockholm, where they're huge brains, huge thinkers, and they were having the last plenary activity where there was a really impressive person talking about planetary boundaries, very high up there in the stratosphere of theory land. And Alexandre looked at me and he said, you know, Wendy, the answers to the problems that we face in the world are not going to come from people. They're going to come from the people who are actually on the ground working on these problems. And so it made me really just re-energize to keep these connections, because the back and forth between theory land and practice land is really important. And so that's kind of what TCD has been built on for all of these years. So it's very rewarding to be able to do that with these partners. And it's really exciting because we have an opportunity for the MDP students to do projects with ICV and IOB in the Resilient Ag. You can go to the next slide. In the Resilient Ag research program. And so we don't have time to talk about that now, but I know that Camilla and Renato and Alexandre are available. I know that Paula has shown some interest. So if anyone's interested, or if you have students that might want to work with ICV and IOB on value chains, one of the outcomes of developing those indicators was we developed like 10 research projects. Like, oh yeah, this is a whole research project. Oh yeah, somebody could do this. So it seems like good opportunities for moving forward. Anything else?
I think it's actually going back, because this is probably, but we also want to just open for discussions, because I know a lot of people here has the experiences of working with NGOs and partnerships, and we want to know for you guys also what's the value of working and maintaining those relationships and going back.